There has never been a better time than now to come join the Bellisio Foods team. Bellisio has a new contract in place with plenty of awesome perks for their employees. From increased wages, access to the free health clinic, vacation after 6 months, and much more, Bellisio Foods is committed to putting their employees first. For more information or to apply, visit BellisioFoods.com/careers. Take advantage of these great new employee benefits and join the Bellisio team today. Visit BellisioFoods.com/careers to learn more. We at Orange Crush have many things to be thankful for, including everyone who makes Orange Crush a part of their day. To show our thanks, Orange Crush, WKOV, and participating Save-A-Lot locations will be giving away Thanksgiving turkeys to dozens of winners because even though Thanksgiving celebrations still might look different this year, we know Thanksgiving favorites will still be a part of your plan. Visit GJPepsiContest.com/turkey to find out where you can enter to win now through November 18th. No purchase is necessary. See official rules for details. Never have our community heroes been more worthy of recognition than today, and Wendy's is here to show thanks for all they do with a free breakfast for a year giveaway. Starting Monday, November 15th through December 9th, we want you to nominate the individuals you feel have gone above and beyond. Just go to yourtotalmedia.com/community heroes and give us a line or two about why someone you know deserves free Wendy's breakfast for a year as part of Wendy's Thank You Thursdays campaign throughout this holiday season. That's right, our community heroes have the opportunity to win free breakfast for a year from Wendy's, which includes a delicious breakfast combo. We'll select a community hero every week on Thursday, and you'll hear their inspiring stories on the air. You can nominate anyone who's made an impact in our community. Wendy's wants to reward our dedicated and hardworking individuals because these heroes have kept our communities together and running. Make your nomination today at yourtotalmedia.com/community heroes, and Wendy's will be providing free breakfast for a year to those deserving individuals.
Well, happy Tuesday, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the morning show right here on Main Street TV. And we have a very fun and special guest with us today, and we're going to talk about, well, robots.
Yes, robots.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, actually, so to start off, tell everyone who you are.
All right. My name is Edward Ruth. I'm a Jackson native. I grew up here. I always like to tell a story. When I was about 3 years old, I was riding with my parents down one of our really dark country roads. And
there's a couple of those out there.
It was really dark. The moon was really big. And I just suddenly realized that the moon might be a place. And if it was a place, maybe a special airplane could fly there and you could go. So I asked my father all about it, and he told me, yes, that was someday that might be possible. So the next day I started playing Space Explorer, and I guess I've been doing that ever since. But I always tell people is I never outgrew that childhood fantasy. I did my undergraduate work at Ohio State, and from Ohio State I went to the California Institute of Technology in Pasadena, California, where I got my PhD in aerospace engineering.
Wow. So you really did follow through with it.
I followed through, and from there I went to work for a corporation called the Aerospace Corporation. It's sort of like the Ohio State University.
It's the one.
You have to say the. And it's kind of hard to explain, but the way I look at it, we were a think tank that supported the Air Force space activities, what we now call the Space Force. Back then it was still in the Air Force. And so we were the technical arm, the PhDs, that supported the Space Force in their what we call national security space activities. So I retired as chief engineer for launch in 2017.
Okay.
And since then, I've been enjoying retirement. But a big part of what I've always been about has been STEM education. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And it's always been sort of to me, an imperative. There's a story about a very famous science fiction writer, Robert Heinlein, once helped a young writer get started writing stories. It's a very competitive business. And the young man said, why did you help me? how can I ever pay you back for this?
Mm-hmm.
And Highline said, don't pay me back, pay me forward. So I look forward at the people that helped me get started. Just a little country boy from Jackson going to some of these places. It was a little intimidating. And I really want to be able to pay it forward. So that's why we got started in STEM. I have past activities. I was the chairperson for the California State Science Fair, which it's like the final science fair in the state. Every science student
you end up there.
Came there,
you do
so
well,
I
yeah.
did that. I've been on a number of
Cool.
STEM committees, but the most fun is actually working hand in hand with kids. And so, just to kind of quickly, why do we want to talk? Why do we want to do STEM? And I always say there's two reasons for wanting to do STEM. First of all, of course, if you identify a student that has a lot of talent for STEM, to me, that's the same as a student, a young person who has a lot of talent for athletics, or a lot of talent, musical talent. The earlier they start training, the earlier they start practicing, the further they're going to be able to go in their career. And it's the same thing. If we have a young boy or girl that's really good at math and science, really motivated and interested, I want to get to them as soon as possible so they can kind of avoid the mistakes I made. And so there's that. And then there's the other thing that I find is very important is I want us to have, as a constitutional republic, as many informed voters as we can. And that's really, I think, quite important. So even if you're not interested in a career in science and technology, you don't want to be an engineer, you're going to go to the voting booth, and you're probably going to be asked to decide on issues that are very technical in nature. Energy, the climate. Right now we have a debate about public health issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I want every person, when they graduate from school, to have enough science background to be able to distinguish between reality and propaganda. And so those are kind of our two goals.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, always interested in STEM. So how do we get into robotics? I always laugh and tell people that I'm pretty good when it comes to space engineering and rockets. But when it comes to robots, I'm just a guy whose wife gave him a robot set for Christmas one year.
She created a monster, didn't she?
Sort of a simple hobby that got out of control. But what I found right away is, and let me show you, James, and we can focus on this little guy.
Yeah, there he is.
There he is.
What's his name?
This is Zippy, actually. Zippy the robot. Yes, Zippy is a Lego Mindstorms robot. It's a kit you can purchase and program to do various things. And what I notice about robots is that it involves almost every aspect of science and technology. You have the mechanical design of the robot, the wheels, the gears, the little motors that drive him. He has electronics and these sensors, computers. This is his brain right here. You have to learn some math in order to make it do the things you want it to do. And so it's a very neat little package.
Yes.
That brings in every part of science and technology, a good start for science and technology education. What's really fun about the Lego ones is the kids think they're playing with Legos. So we have no trouble getting them enthusiastic in the classroom. They come in, we have them build a robot out of the kit. And by the way, I'm not a salesperson for Lego. I don't get any commissions from them.
Well, maybe you should, but that's a whole other show.
Yeah. So, but I do like the Lego kits, and I'll say this is that the kids can build them easily because they're used to Legos. There's no tools. They just put together. If you can't break it, if it comes apart, you just snap it back together.
True.
And they are very capable little robots. Now, there are other companies that sell similar products. I say I don't know everybody's, so I can't recommend one or the other. This is the ones we use. The product name is Mindstorms. This is the Spike Prime. which is sold by Lego Education.
Okay.
Lego Education is their branch that supports STEM.
Okay.
So Lego does have a big STEM thing. So that's basically the idea. We have the kids come in. We start the program I've had, we start in the 4th grade. We do 4th, 5th, and 6th. The schools we were at, then they went to junior high. They didn't have middle school.
Okay.
So we had 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. In the 4th grade, they learned how to build the robot, basically kind of how to read plans. And we start introducing them to a little bit of math in how do you tell how far your robot's going to move, how to do graphs, how to kind of calibrate your robot to do things.
Okay.
And then what I really thought was interesting is that the federal government had a program where they called a robot challenge. This was in the early 2000s.
Okay.
And in the robot challenge, they would ask everybody who had a robot to come, and they would present them with some sort of a scenario. And whoever's robot did the best won a cash prize.
Well, we all like that, don't we?
So do the kids. So what we do is we offer at the end of the class, it all builds towards the idea of we're going to do a grand robot challenge where they're given a real world scenario. Since I'm a space guy, the scenarios I always presented them were in space. Usually it's some group of astronauts are trapped on Mars, and somehow we have to get to them with our robot to
like Matt Damon.
Like Matt Damon, bring them supplies.
And you live in Idaho, so you could teach them about potatoes as well.
Yes, we have very good potatoes in Idaho.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
Didn't mean to interrupt.
I
digress.
Right. So, but we have them basically. They are to perform this task. It corresponds to what grade? The 4th graders, all they have to do is we usually have something we tell them that's a pallet of supplies, and the robot would have to go forward to where the astronauts are, drop the supplies, and go back.
Okay.
If the 5th graders, the robot has to go forward, pick up something, and bring it back to base.
Uh-huh.
Okay. 6th graders, we have a little bit more challenge. In fact, so for 4th and 5th graders, I told them if they could successfully complete the robot challenge, and we made sure that before we let any team, and usually we ran the kids in teams from 2 to 5.
Okay.
Because we didn't have enough robots for every kid. Every team was ready to compete to make sure every kid got their dollar. And so we told the 6th graders, I gave them a much harder problem. And I said, if you can do I gave them an easy problem, the hard problem. If you do the hard problem, I'll give you $10. Of course, everyone
a piece.
A piece. That's right. So of course, every one of them wanted to do the hard problem. Every one of them did the hard problem. So I was out quite a bit of pocket change that time.
Oh
no! So every kid won $10 that time.
Talk about your all-time backfires.
That's right. Well, no, I was actually kind of happy to see them succeed.
Yes.
And I didn't think they could do it actually, so I didn't give them enough credit. So that's basically the whole background. We do, like I said, we do the professional development. I have material that I'm happy to offer up. If anybody is out there, whether you're a parent that's homeschooling your child and you want to get into this, whether you're a teacher that's looking to do some career development,
okay.
Whether you're a teacher that, like one school we worked with, they had 15 robots in boxes. They had no clue what to do with them.
Oh, wow.
If you're in that situation where you have the robots and you want to how do you get started? Mm-hmm. So I do have the material. I'm happy to provide it to anybody. You can contact the station and
get a hold of us. We'll get you in touch with it
and see that you can get it. And I think that's kind of a lot of what I wanted to say. Let's see what's left. I don't know. I think that's pretty much clear. James, can you want to show a clip of the robot that? So here, what we're seeing here, it's a robot. It's the background. It's on Mars. The scenario is that antenna was stuck down, and the students had to program the robot to leave from the base, go forward, navigate to where it was close to the antenna, put its little pusher thing in front, and then push the antenna up. So that would be the kind of grand robot challenge we would give to the sixth graders, for example. And like I said, try to keep it real world. They have to use their math. They can't just use trial and error. And I think that's one of the issues I've had with a lot of the material that is available for teachers to use on robotics in the classroom. And there certainly is other programs, other material. But a lot of it I felt like really didn't emphasize the science and math as much as it emphasized just building a robot and then programming it to do things.
Well, so this has always been, I don't want to say my problem with school, but I think that it's lacking in school, and that is why you need things. Like, and what I'm trying to say is how you associate math or science or history to real life scenarios.
And that's exactly what we want to do with the robot. So the math.
This is perfect for that.
The math, in order to make the robot do what they want, they have to learn some math.
And then apply it.
And then apply it to the real. So it isn't just, well, today we're going to learn to do graphs. Well, why do I need a graph? Well, we're going to graph your robot's motion versus power to the motors, for example, so you'll know how to set that to make the robot go where you want it to go. So it's a direct tie between this material we're teaching you in the school. This is why we learn it.
Love that.
And I guess the other thing we do also, I should have mentioned this earlier. One of the real big aspects in the program I kind of push is to talk about what I call technical ethics.
Okay.
And technical ethics is that just because you can do a thing doesn't necessarily mean you should do the thing. If you're going to make an atomic bomb just because you think it would be a big firecracker, that was a very interesting technical challenge for the physicists who worked on it. But it's clear from their writings they didn't think a lot about what was going to happen after they were done. So we talked to the kids about technical ethics. Why would you use a robot? Where would you use a robot? Where is it ethical? And I just as an aside, one of the biggest disappointments to me is that neither the 4th, 5th, or 6th graders could tell me what ethical behavior was. It's just not something that it was big in their world. So we talk about the ethics of robots, displacing workers, for example.
Okay.
Where would you use a robot? Well, we say we use a robot where it's too dangerous to use a human, or it's too boring to use a human, or it's too expensive to use a human. And I talk about building a robot that chases my wife around the house and throws things at her. And was that ethical or not? Well, no, that's not ethical. So.
But it's fun.
But it was fun. Until she got, for a while.
Until she figured out how to throw something back at you.
That's right. If I had a robot that made the bed every day, I would really love that. But at the same time, if I was a person who
the Jetsons did it, why can't you?
The Jetsons had the lady that did the robot. But if I was a person who lost their job to robots, I might not find it so interesting.
Correct.
So why would you do it? And where is it ethical to use robots? Where perhaps it's not ethical to use robots? And to think about what do we do with a robot when it's end of life? How do you sustainable living and things? And so we try to tie that in too. And to me, it's a very important that when I went through engineering school, I don't think we ever hardly mentioned professional ethics once.
Yeah.
And it was assumed that people knew. And I think it's important to stop and think.
You're assuming that people know right from wrong.
And you stop and think about what is right, what is wrong, how can this be used or misused, what safeguards are there, that kind of thing. So emphasis on that too.
That makes sense. And I like that. You're teaching the kids to think outside the box. And I think the most important thing for me is, thinking back about school and whatever. And as I mentioned earlier, sitting there saying, Okay, I'm learning this algebra stuff and I'm learning geometry and I'm writing these proofs and I have no idea why in the world I have to know this stuff. It's stupid. I hate it.
Yep. So
What is the point?
That's part of what we try to do.
This is perfect
and it's
for that.
fun. They think they're learning all this stuff, and they think they're playing with Legos, and they are playing with Legos. I mean, it is
right. And like, what kid doesn't like to play with Legos?
That's right. So, and that's important. The other story I tell is that by doing this, interestingly, we can sometimes identify developmental problems that some of the kids have. For example, the story I tell is the little girl that was, she kept trying to put the robot together in the mirror image. We had, basically the drawings of how the robot should, what we wanted it to look like, and she was putting it together backwards. She had dyslexia.
And no one knew.
No one knew, but we saw it right away when she was trying to build the robot.
Sure.
So there's some other advantages to it. Okay.
So let's talk for a minute about, we touched on it. Obviously, you need math, you need science, you need all of these things.
Computer programming
to make this thing work.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you begin? Let's like in layman's terms and dumb gen terms.
Well,
how do you build this thing and make it do what you want it to do? Is it hooked up to a computer?
Yes. All right. So I should have explained. So the robot, this particular robot, you can program with your smartphone, with a tablet, or a computer.
Okay.
And how?
So there's like an app.
There's an application.
Okay.
There's two software packages right now that are very popular for teaching computer code for young people. One's called Scratch, the other's called Python.
Okay.
This robot supports both Scratch and Python. So how would it work? Scratch is a drag and drop program where you have, like Legos, you have blocks of code that say things like robot move forward.
Okay.
And for the very young students, they just lock on that block and then drag it and build a series of blocks that they then download, usually through Bluetooth or through a cable, to this computer here on the robot. This yellow piece, sorry, James, the yellow part's the computer, which then executes the command.
So you build it in the computer,
right.
Then the computer transfers it to the brain.
And for starting, I would build a robot where you have the plans from somebody else's design. This is a pretty basic bot I have right here. It's about the simplest you can make. It's got two motors that drive the wheels. It's got a little tail dragger here, a caster in the back. It's got one motor in the middle that runs this little arm up and down.
Okay.
It's got a sonar so it can see ahead to avoid obstacles. And then on the bottom, this is a photo sensor where it can look for lines on the ground. So, for example, this robot, if it sees a different color, it'll stop. You can program it. If I see a yellow block on the ground, stop. You can also program it to follow a dark line, like a track.
Okay, yeah, and we have a video of that.
A video of robots following the track. And so the child or the adult puts together the code. You download it to your robot, and then you execute it. And the challenge, of course, is to get the robot to do more things, to add more mechanical devices, to get it to do more precise maneuvers.
Yeah.
Like to make turns and things more precisely. And how all that works, and understanding. Scratch, once the student outgrows Scratch, they're ready for Python. Python is a code that's a computer programming environment that's used by professional programmers to write real code. And when I say real code, it's an alphabetical code where you type words like move or stop. And instead of just dragging a block of a graphic element, you have to, on a keyboard, you type in robot, whatever the command is, robot move, robot stop, robot turn. And then you execute. And that really teaches you computer coding, which is an important skill these days for everyone to learn. And you also learn right away that the robot, whatever you tell the robot to do, the first time you run your code, it's not going to do it. It's going to do something different. So that's a learning lesson right there.
It's very humbling,
Yeah,
I'm
very
sure.
humbling. Yeah. So, what like I said, we have to learn the math that's going on. How do I get this robot to move forward 10 centimeters and stop?
So how would math be involved in that?
Well, it's called odometry.
Okay.
On your car, you have a thing called an odometer.
Yes.
Right. So how does the odometer work? It counts however many times your wheels make a complete revolution.
Sure.
And using math, what we know is that any wheeled vehicle will move the circumference of the wheel for every turn. The circumference is the distance around the outside of the wheel.
Right.
That's one of those things they tell you in schools, like, why would I ever know that?
Here we go.
Yeah, that's right. So the circumference is the diameter, the distance across the wheel, times the Greek letter pi, which is a transcendental number, 3.14159, blah, blah, blah. Right.
Yeah.
That gives you the distance around this wheel. And it makes sense. Every time that wheel goes all the way around, if there's no slipping between it and the ground, that's how far you're going to move.
Okay.
So how do I make the robot go if I wanted 10 centimeters? I have to measure my diameter. Mm-hmm. I calculate my circumference. I calculate from that how many times I have to turn the wheel to move 10 centimeters for this circumference.
Okay.
And then I tell the wheel to move that many times. As it turns out, this robot with these wheels will move 17.5 centimeters for every time the wheel turns. So for one turn of the wheel, the robot would move 17.5 centimeters.
Gotcha.
Okay. And that's one of the things. The first thing once the fourth graders build their robot, what we have them do is have it sit there and go one turn of the wheels, 2 turns of the wheels, 3 turns of the wheels. And we then have them measure how far did it move. And then we'll plot it on a graph. And lo and behold, it'll fit the theory very well. And in fact, I used the results of the kids doing that in some professional level classes I taught at work on how to do experiments and take data, because it really confirmed all that theory about statistics is working out with the kids. So that's basically how we get started, and how the math gets applied. So they're learning programming when they have to write their little programs.
Sure.
They're having to use the math to make the robot move. If we wanted to make a turn like 90 degrees, there's other math that tells it how to turn. They have to figure out how to use the sensors, like the sonar. If I wanted the robot to move and stop before it hits an obstacle, how do you do that? If I wanted to follow a line, how do I program the robot to use the light sensor on the bottom to follow lines?
Which was like in the video that we just showed.
The one video, yeah. And line following turns out
one.
a very, very important robot skill.
And then James was telling me that, you can like say, for example, I want this robot to go find the yellow square.
Well, yeah, you can do that.
And
It'll go forward. If there's a yellow square, it'll find it. This robot can do a number of professional level robotics things.
Okay.
We don't press that onto elementary school kids, but yeah, there's plenty of YouTube videos of people using this to do some very high level robotic stuff.
So Zippy has some high capabilities.
Zippy is very capable. In fact,
pretty smart dude.
If you look at what a professional level robot would have, it would have a computer, it would have motors, it would have a sonar, a light sensor. All the pieces are there. So that's why I like the Mindstorms. Like I said, I don't get paid by Lego, but we have used these from the beginning and have been very happy, very pleased with how they work.
So if, Christmas is coming up, right? And, so kids nowadays, it's really hard to shop for them. And if maybe somebody says, hey, I think maybe a robot starter kit would be great for my child. Would this be something
this certainly
that you
would be it.
purchase?
So and they come in 2 flavors.
Okay.
One is called the Robot Invention System, which is marketed by Lego more as a toy than an educational. But if you get the package, all the parts are in there. Okay. Spike Prime is what they market to the schools as the educational product. I said to the schools, but anybody can buy it. It's almost the same kit. There's just a few subtle differences. What sensors they include, how many motors are in the box. So each of those, any one of those would certainly get you started in robotics. If, for example, you're homeschooling or you just want to do something with your kids.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Fun project.
either of those kits would be great.
Did they come with instructions
They
of
come
how
with
to get started
instructions
and all
support.
that? Okay.
And that's one of the things I always tell the teachers is that Lego Education offers a lot of support to get going. So it's not like you're just thrown into a pond and you got to learn to swim right
Well,
away.
they're not just trying to sell kits; they're actually trying to help you use them.
They're trying to help you use them.
And that's a big difference.
Yeah. So they're good. So that's a good product. Now, there are a number of others. Like I said, I can't afford to buy every robot to test it. These are the ones that we've been using. But I think you could shop around. As far as cost, there are probably robot kits that are very similar to this one that are less expensive.
Okay.
I can't talk about them because I don't have one. Whether they can do the same amount of activities, I don't know. Some of them I know require tools to assemble. What I really liked about these is there's no tools, and like I said earlier, the kids like Legos. They're
familiar with Legos.
They're already familiar with Legos, and they know how to snap them together and make them go. Okay.
That is really cool. Okay, so if anybody is out there watching, if you're a teacher or a parent that would like to
Or a student
to start that, or you're a student sitting at home,
they have material suitable for high school students.
This is awesome. You have materials that will help them learn and apply all of these skills toward
That's right.
making this robot go.
And what we're talking about is generic. It doesn't matter what robot you have, as long as it's somewhat like this: a differential drive, 2 drive motors, and a set of sensors. Then our material will work with your robot. Yes.
Very good. And how do so is it a material that you can email to someone?
Yes, I'll send you. Basically, it's a PDF copy of a draft of a book that I'm working on.
Oh.
So we have I have a set of charts we use with the teachers, but it's for the last generation of Lego robots. And what I decided to do with the book is to make it more generic, so it's not tied to Lego as directly. Mm-hmm. And it's still applicable. Everything that we do in the classroom is discussed, and we show you how to do it in this material.
That's wonderful. And this all applies back to the STEM.
It's all geared towards STEM, pushing, helping students get a better handle on STEM. Why we do what's the difference between a scientist and an engineer? And what do engineers do? What do scientists do? And why does it make a difference to you if that's not what you think you're going to do with the rest of your life?
Yeah. And why those stupid algebra problems come in handy.
And why the algebra problems make sense.
But isn't that bothersome? Like, I don't know. And I'm not knocking anything. I'm just saying, I can always remember sitting in history class or whatever being like, why do I need to memorize all of these stupid facts? None of it has anything to do with anything. It already happened. And if someone had just said, well, history repeats itself because out of ignorance, and that you don't know, if you don't know what happened before, then it can happen again, I would have been like, oh.
Yeah. It's the same thing here. We really try to apply to real life, to real engineering scenarios. That's why I like the robot challenge. The robot challenge is, here is a problem. We are going to solve it.
Yes.
It is not that different from a real world scenario where the problem is the same. It's maybe not quite as complex and sophisticated, but you're going through exactly the same steps. You're learning the same process that a working engineer would work through. in order to solve this problem using whatever technology that is available, like a robot.
Love that. So let's talk for a minute about robots in general. And you talked about ethics earlier, and I know where you're going with that. You're going with it of you don't want robots to replace everything that humans can do. We all need jobs, right? We need to earn money and that kind of thing. But what are scenarios, I can think of one in my mind, where a robot, humans should not be doing it, and robots all the way?
And that's one of the things we always try to get the kids to talk about in the class.
I'm thinking about bombs.
Well, the first one they almost always bring up is bomb disposal.
Yeah.
There was, as you may remember, the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris caught fire a few years ago. And you know how they fought that fire? Because it was too dangerous. They set a robot in there.
Really?
And so we showed the kids the robot going in and fighting the fire. So
I didn't know that.
Bomb disposal, going down into mines. We were in coal country, or was coal country here, rescuing people trapped in mines. One of the men that I got to have a chance to actually have been able to work with in my career is named Red Whitaker. Red built the robots that went into 3 Mile Island after, if you don't know, 3 Mile Island was a nuclear disaster in the United States. It was too dangerous for humans, couldn't go in there. Red built robots to go in. He also built robots that went into Chernobyl after the Chernobyl disaster. Wow. So you use robots there. Another place where we see robots all the time is on the assembly line. And he said, well, gee, that's a job a human could do. Yeah, but my point is that's a job that's really boring for humans. So do you want to stand there and just do the same thing over and over? Just let a robot do it. And there are times when the robot can do the job more precise than a human. And the best example of that are the various medical robots that operate on people's eyes and things. And kind of
so precise.
Very precise. And one of the great stories that goes with that, we were talking about that in one classroom, and the teacher spoke up and said, by the way, I'm alive today because a medical robot was able to perform a surgery on me that saved my life.
You're kidding.
And so, that was a great example right there to the kids. This is where you use a robot, because the human doctor just couldn't do the precision that the robot had. It was really interesting. He talked about, he's there, they put you under and he's going to sleep, and he says, they bring the robot in as you're going to sleep. And he sees this thing coming into the room.
No.
So there is that. And then I think the last part was we use robots for jobs that they're just better at than people. And one of the examples that I don't think we're quite there yet is that robots actually are very good in dealing with the elderly. And, I don't know, right now we're dealing with my elderly mother. And the thing that they explain about why they're looking at robots for that application is that the robots are very patient.
That makes sense.
They don't lose their temper. They just wait till the person, and they can just, when you're ready, the robot, I'll do it. And they can be made to look comforting, not scary. And so there's like an application there that's a lot of potential for robots. It's just something where a person maybe can't do it quite. You're like, come on, Mom, it's time to.
Yeah, you lose your patience with
It's time to brush your
ones.
teeth. The robot will just wait till you're ready to brush your teeth. So those are the sorts of things where we could use a robot. The places where we shouldn't use a robot is just because you can. Don't displace a human from a job. I think that using robots on the battlefield, now I freely confessed, I worked for the national security all my life. I don't have a problem with that, but I am quite concerned about automated weapon systems that are totally autonomous, that will fire on refugees or terrorists indiscriminately.
Because they can't make that
They can't
decision.
make that distinction. They don't have a conscience. It's not like a human soldier. So
well, I don't know. You see some movies in Hollywood
I
where
know,
they start thinking.
I know they start. And
That's some I mean, is that possible?
I suppose it actually is. These robots
That's scary, but
these little robots aren't going to start thinking. But yeah, that's a whole nother story about, eventually artificial intelligence and whether or not they can displace humans or be smarter than we are and take over. Somehow I have a feeling that that's a long ways off, but you never know. Things happen pretty fast. So,
hey, the Jetsons made it happen.
the Jetsons were great.
I'll bet you loved that one as a kid, huh?
Actually, my sister and I fought over it because the Jetsons was on the same time that there was a space cartoon show on. And I wanted to watch the other one. And so we would fight.
So it was more realistic.
It was
probably.
a fight over. It was a little more realistic.
No!
So we would fight over who got to watch the Jetsons or the other show, and but that's pretty funny too.
I think that's so cool that you were. Growing up here in our area, we talk about the beauty here, but the fact that you were just driving down a backcountry road as a little kid and looked up and saw the moon, which if you were in a big city, you probably would not have ever done.
There's no night sky and it's all covered with smog and smoke anyway.
Correct. So there you go. So, growing up in our little community enabled you to start this career that you're so passionate about.
And let me just kind of add to that a little bit. I kind of hesitate to tell this part of the story, but I will. You may feel like if you're in Jackson County, Oak Hill, whatever, that, well, I can't, this is not for me. I can't. I
was going to ask you about that.
And I was told that as a young person, that this career was not for me because of where I was, and I didn't pay any attention to them. Yes. I did it anyway. If this is your passion, if you really are interested in medicine, robotics, space, computers, whatever it is, and it seems like, how can I get there? I will tell you that when I got to Ohio State, it didn't take me that long to catch up with the kids from the big city.
Sure.
You're probably was a little bit behind in some areas,
mm-hmm.
and it was a little scary, but you can do it. You just have to apply yourself. It isn't anything worth doing is not going to just be handed to you. It's going to be hard.
Right.
A full-time professional career in science and technology, it involves a commitment. I really, not everyone can throw a football and not everyone can be a scientist or engineer. But if you have that talent, if you have that interest, I think that it's probably easier to develop your mental skills than it is to develop sometimes your physical athletic skills. So I would encourage any young person that wants to move forward in a career, do it. Just
do it.
Yeah, plan it out, but understand this. Don't be like one of our young friends who came to us and talked about a career in science, and we asked him about his grades, and he had a C average. Then we said, well, what kind of school do you want to go to? And he started looking at good engineering schools. And what was the average grade point of most entrants? It was much higher than his. And if he started getting straight A's from here until he graduated, what would be his grade point average at graduation? And would it be good enough to get him in the school he wanted? So another piece of advice is right now is a good time to start working on that GPA and looking at all the other activities like robotics, in order to start enhancing your resume, to build that up towards...
Get involved.
To get involved with stuff, you betcha.
Yeah. And, I love that you said that I was going to make you go there about being from small town Ohio. And listen, the world is your oyster at this point. You didn't have the internet. You didn't have access to any of the stuff that kids today have access to.
Plus, it was like... we went to Columbus once a year kind of thing because it was a big deal.
So you were definitely at a disadvantage. Kids today, I I don't know that they have as much disadvantage.
I have
And if you want it to happen, you can make it
I
happen.
have a feeling that today in Jackson, it's easier to go to Columbus when you want. Not that Columbus is, but the point is you're not just stuck here in Jackson County. You can get out. We have the internet. We have 157,000 TV channels.
Right.
We have libraries. You have books. You can download. You can buy a tablet and download all the library books you want. You can read as much as you can.
A lot of it's for free.
And a lot of it's for free. I can remember I read every book in the Jackson City Library on science and space I could get my hands on.
Yep.
And now you can, like you've been saying, it's there. A lot of it's free. And there are a lot of organizations that are just dying to help you. There is First Lego League is a competition.
Okay.
That is open to elementary students, I think through 7th grade. I don't do First Lego League, but there's nothing. It's obviously something the kids really get off on. It's the same deal where you have you build a robot, and then every year they have a different set of challenges. Like the robot has to perform tasks on Mars. I think this year it's working through a logistics hub where it's moving cargo around and bringing cargo back. And the kids really like that. So First Lego League clubs are certainly another way to get involved.
How fun. And if there isn't one here in the area, start one.
You can start it. There are the professional science and engineering societies just are dying to give away scholarships. I used to be involved with the Astronautics Society, and they had scholarships for kids where they were, maybe only 3 or 4 kids would apply. So look, if you have an interest in astronautics, look at the American Astronautical Society, and the other one is the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. It's free for high school students to join AIAA. They have a lot of STEM support programs, and they do a lot of things. That's available right now in high school. You don't have to. You could join and start getting tied in to that sort of support structure. I think there's a number of others. There are societies. There's the Society of Women Engineers is another good example.
That's cool.
I know they have scholarships available for people that are interested and deserving. So there's a lot of avenues. When I was doing the California State Science Fair, one of the things that we tried to do is we would send a representative to every county science fair and talk to the county fair winners because they were the students that would come to the state fair.
Sure.
And I would try to go to as many of the county fairs as I could. And I remember on several occasions talking to a young Hispanic woman who did very well in the county science fair, and trying to encourage both of them. Do you want a career in science? Well, yes, but it's not open to me. Well, why not? Well, could never afford to go to college. One phone call to the Society of Women's Engineers, one phone call to the Society of Hispanic Engineers, we got those kids scholarships.
There you go.
So don't be shy about looking into those sorts of things because they're there, and oftentimes they're just sitting on the table.
And you changed their lives.
Hopefully they went on. That's the last thing to kind of touch on. We don't have. It's very difficult to get metrics on how successful your STEM program is, because I can't wait around 20 years to see does the kid become an engineer.
Yep, from the 4th grade on.
Right.
Grade.
Is he now a medical doctor? But what we try to do is look for that, and I follow kids as long as you can. Eventually, they stop emailing you, but try to track them as long as you can.
Sure.
And one of the things we talked about, and I've yet to have been successfully do, is how can you tell whether at least you've had an immediate impact? And we've been experimenting with something called draw a scientist. So I've admitted it to call draw a scientist or draw an engineer. And how you do a draw a scientist is at the beginning of the STEM program, the first day, you ask the students, draw a picture of a scientist.
Like,
And
in your head, what
in
you
their
think
head,
a scientist would look like?
You'll usually get something like Dr. Frankenstein in his lab making a monster, right? And then at the end of the program, you say, draw a scientist. And hopefully they will draw a picture of themselves. That's the one metric that I've been trying to work on. I have to be honest that I'm not always capable of interpreting the artwork that I've gotten successfully, but it has been encouraging. So if you do start a STEM program, I would suggest looking at the draw a scientist. It's easy to do. Just make sure that you keep their original artwork at the end of the year, have them do it again, and look for changes. So
Love that. That's such a good idea.
okay.
Yeah. Wow, this has been so fun to talk about, and I loved meeting Zippy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a cutie.
Zippy's got his name because he's one of the fastest robots I ever was able to design and put together for running the line following on the track. He really zips. So I said, this robot's name has to be Zippy.
I love that. Love that. So you were telling me, we have a few minutes left, so we may as well chat. You were telling me that you actually, so I was joking with him, and he called me on something, that you're living in Boise, Idaho now.
I am. Yes, I'm in Boise.
And I said, how the heck did you end up in Boise, Idaho? Do you like potatoes? And he said,
the potatoes are really, really good in Idaho. It's surprising. Everybody that comes to visit us.
I thought he was kidding, but he's not.
Every person that visits us says, wow, these are the best potatoes I've ever had. So, yeah, it's the potatoes are really good.
There is a difference.
They're fresher. There's something about it. In Boise, they're one of the biggest employers. I guess our local billionaire is a man named Joe Simplot.
Okay.
Simplot got his start in that McDonald's came to Idaho and it was asking in the very beginning about who can provide us potatoes to these specifications. And he said, I'll do it. So he's now a billionaire because he sells all the potatoes to McDonald's.
To McDonald's.
So you see around the Boise area, there'll be great big factories, Simplot, and
they're making those McDonald's fries. God bless them. God bless them.
And
they are delicious.
His charitable contributions. So I thought that was just kind of funny. My brother and sister-in-law work in logistics, and what they do is help get the potatoes to the McDonald's in your area. And so they came to visit and they saw the Simplot factory and go, oh yeah, Simplot, we know who that is. Well, this is where it starts. So we have good potatoes. Idaho has a lot of good food. It's an agricultural state. And there's just a lot of interesting locally grown food products. And so we've been enjoying that.
So this is a dumb question, but I think it's valid. What makes Idaho the potato state? Like, what makes it conducive to growing potatoes?
I have no clue. You can drive across the border into Oregon and it looks the same. So I have no clue.
Why aren't there Oregon potatoes?
I have no idea. But obviously potatoes and also onions. The one little community we drive through is the onion capital of the world where they grow the onions. So it's like at Jackson's Apple Festival. They have I don't know if they call it the Onion Festival, but yeah.
That would be a weird one to have, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I've seen Stranger, though.
Yeah. So Idaho's a nice state.
Yeah, you said you really, really enjoy living there.
Boise is the fastest growing city in the United States, or one of the fastest.
Isn't that crazy? Who would have known?
And it's because, like I said, I think I look in Boise as sort of very much like Jackson on steroids. It has the same look and feel, get the same seasons, and the people have this Idaho friendliness to them that reminds me a lot of growing up here in Jackson.
You know, and I will say, and I don't know if Idaho as a state is that way, but I can tell you that living in Southern Ohio, and we've mentioned this numerous times, versus even going up to the Columbus area or one of the big cities. So spending a lot of time in Columbus, it took me a minute to realize that when you're walking down the street in Jackson, you say hello to somebody and
Yes.
it's just common
And
practice.
it's,
And in Columbus, they literally will run across the street from you. They're terrified.
when I was working, and I'm not going to put down California too hard, but on the campus of our company, people who had to, they had to have known who I was. Nobody was there that didn't have, wasn't a company employee, and people would look at their feet and not speak to you. It
Literally.
used to just drive me crazy. And Idaho's certainly not that way.
Good.
So it's a nice, friendly place. So.
And that's good to hear that there are other places, and and having the restaurant and the brewery and things, we have a ton. I've mentioned this numerous times, but people don't know how many people travel through Jackson, Ohio. It's really at a crossroads, and we have a lot of folks stop here and stay, whether they're going to the beach, from the beach, wherever they're traveling, and that is the common thread. Everyone here is so nice.
Friendly, yeah.
Like, I was walking from the coffee shop down to your restaurant, and my gosh, like 3 people said hello to me, and they say it like they're so surprised, and I'm like, yeah,
exactly. That's the same. It's
they better have, because if not, I'd be sad.
Right. I think it's important to that we all sort of feel like a part of a community.
Yeah.
And
maybe it's a Midwestern thing. I don't know.
I don't know. I think it has less to do with competition for resources than anything else.
Maybe.
But so I guess I would add that too, by the way. Maybe my experience is different. But if you are interested in a career in STEM, it's usually...
Which stands for what again?
Science, technology, engineering, and math.
There you go.
That the STEM workers usually are pretty welcoming, and it may not appear as diverse as people want, because a lot of us old white guys are still there, but we're retiring and dying off. I never have noticed anybody subjected to any kind of discrimination in
pretty
STEM.
Inclusive group.
It's a pretty inclusive group. In fact, engineers in general, I think, go way out of their way to help people get started in their career. It's like Highline. Why would you help me get started in a career where I'm going to be your competition? And we're just like, well, we want to help everybody. We want to pay forward. So yeah. I think you will find it's a welcoming area to get into. It can be competitive. Doing well in school is obviously competitive, but it's not exclusive.
And I love that. And listen, if you can, this goes back to my husband's theory of making the pie bigger, not dividing the pie. But if you have more brilliant minds bouncing ideas off of each other, there's nothing negative about that. Well, that's all good.
When you look at, I'll get in trouble, but I'm going to talk about it. When you look at,
I love it.
When you look at how we look at the human progress. And the example I like to bring up is my grandmother. When my grandmother was a young woman, if she wanted to go to town, somebody had to hitch up the team for her, mm-hmm. which physically she found difficult.
Okay.
And that was, you want to go to town, there was a lot of energy. When they got their first car, somebody had to crank the car to start, which again, physically was difficult.
Sure.
The one thing that enabled her to have equality with the men was the electric self-starter for the car, because she could turn a switch and the car would start and she could go to town anytime she wanted to.
Right. Which made her not dependent on anybody.
Not dependent on others. When I actually believe this, maybe I'm still idealistic, when you look at human progress, when something has gotten better that was bad, like slavery, what was the driver behind the end of it? When you look in history, ancient history, not one ancient philosopher, if you can find one, tell me, ever spoke out against slavery. They just viewed it as an inevitable part of the human condition. When did slavery end? It's when engineers made it obsolete.
Makes sense.
The human wealth of any society has nothing to do with gold or the size of the population. It is totally dependent on the amount of mass and energy that you can manipulate to your end. And the more we can do that, it brings issues like climate change or, displacement of workers.
Sure.
But in the long run, the human progress to better life, more equality, healthier people has been simply how much, as scientists and engineers, how much have we been able to bring to bear? How much mass and energy can your society manipulate to your advantage? And I really believe that. So that's why I'm still an optimist. I'm still a big believer that we have a bright future ahead of us.
Good.
That we're going to solve these problems. We got a lot of bright people, a lot of bright young people that are learning robotics today that tomorrow are going to solve climate change or whatever. So that's the point.
Love it.
Okay.
All right. Well, once again, Dr. Ed here, and actually uncle of James, if you didn't know. So thanks for arranging this today, James. This was fun.
Thanks for coming in, Ed. I appreciate that.
I hope it was useful. Thank you. I appreciate it.
This has been a blast. You come back anytime.
Okay, thank you.
Love it.
We'll be back next Thanksgiving.
Okay, so next Thanksgiving we'll be in a new studio.
All right.
Hopefully by then, right, James? But we'd love to have you back and bring Zippy too if you have another
or something better. We'll see.
Another Zippy. But yes, if you are interested in any of Dr. Ed's materials, or maybe teaching your class about robots or anything like that, get a hold of us and we'll put you in his direction.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, well, let's head out of here for the day, and we'll be back here tomorrow with nobody
On the schedule. So today is probably going to be our moving day for our studio. So we'll see what happens tomorrow.
We may or may not be here tomorrow.
So we hope to be in our new studio Thursday morning for sure.
Okay.
But tomorrow is very much up in the air right now.
Okay, so if we do not appear tomorrow, you'll know that progress is being made. How's that?
Good.
Yeah. Maybe a robot can help us move.
There you go.
All right. Have a wonderful day, everyone. We appreciate you so much for tuning in, and we'll be back here tomorrow or Thursday. Bye-bye.